They handed her the radio and pointed to the bench. Not the tactical position, not the overwatch point. Just a weathered wooden bench outside the command trailer where she could monitor frequencies and stay out of the way. The hostage negotiation had been running for 6 hours. The tactical team was already in position. Her name wasn't on the deployment roster. Not anymore. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 3 weeks earlier, she had held the department's longest confirmed shot record. Now she held a clipboard and listened to other people make decisions about targets she could have neutralized with her eyes closed. But when the situation went critical and the negotiator's voice cracked over the everything changed. The distance was 800 meters. The window was 3 seconds. And suddenly, nobody else could make the shot. Detective Sarah Martinez sat in the fluorescent-lit conference room, her hands folded on the metal table, watching Deputy Chief Harrison shuffle through incident reports like he was dealing cards. Each page landed with a soft thud against the surface. Her badge lay beside his coffee cup, the metal reflecting harsh overhead lights. The air conditioning hummed with a mechanical persistence that filled the silence between them. "Walk me through it again," Harrison said without looking up. His voice carried the weight of someone who had already made his decision, but needed to hear the justification one more time. Sarah's eyes moved to the window. Outside, patrol cars rolled through the parking lot in their usual rotation. Officers she had trained with, shared shifts with, trusted with her life. None of them were sitting in this room defending their actions to a man who had spent more time behind a desk than behind a scope in the last decade. The suspect was armed with a .45 caliber pistol, she began, her voice steady. He had fired 2 rounds into the storefront window. Civilians were still inside the pharmacy. He was moving toward the entrance with intent to enter. Harrison's pen scratched against the margin of the report. Distance, 420 meters. Weather conditions, clear, wind southwest at 6 knots, temperature 72 degrees. And you took the shot without authorization from the incident commander. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The incident commander was negotiating with a different suspect 3 blocks away. Radio traffic was jammed. The suspect was seconds from entering a building with 17 civilians inside. Harrison finally looked up. His eyes were tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from too many budget meetings and not enough field time. "Detective Martinez, you understand that protocol requires clearance from command before any sniper engagement?" "Yes, sir." "You understand that unauthorized discharge of a weapon during a tactical operation is grounds for suspension pending investigation?" "Yes, sir." "And you understand that the suspect you shot was 17 years old?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah had known his age within hours of the incident. She had also known about the 3 prior arrests for armed robbery, the history of violence, the fact that he had already fired on police officers earlier that morning. None of that seemed to matter now. The age of the suspect doesn't change. "The threat assessment," she said quietly. Harrison closed the folder. "It changes everything, detective. The media, the community, the department's reputation. A 17-year-old kid gunned down by a sniper from 400 meters away. That's not the story we want to tell." Sarah stared at him. "The story I can tell is that 17 people went home to their families that night because a threat was neutralized before he could harm them. That's not how the review board sees it." "How does the review board see it?" Harrison leaned back in his chair. "They see an officer who acted independently, ignored chain of command, and used lethal force without proper authorization. They see someone who put the department at legal risk and created a public relations nightmare." Sarah's hands remained folded, but her knuckles had gone white. "And what do you see, Chief?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer but no less final. I see a good officer who made a bad decision. I see someone who let adrenaline override judgment. I see a decorated detective who forgot that we're part of a team, not a one-person army. I see a pharmacy full of people who are alive today. Harrison stood up and walked to the window. His reflection merged with the glass, creating a double image against the afternoon light. Sarah, you're one of the best marksmen this department has ever had. Your scores are off the charts. Your record speaks for itself. But being a good shot doesn't make you a good tactical officer. I've been on SWAT for 4 years. And in those 4 years, you've had 3 incidents where you acted without proper clearance. The review board calls it a pattern of insubordination. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. What incidents? Harrison returned to his seat and opened a different folder. February 15th, 2023. Armed robbery in progress. You moved from your assigned position to get a better angle on the suspect without informing the team leader. The suspect was about to execute a hostage. March 8th, 2023. Domestic violence call escalated to barricaded subject. You took a non-lethal shot to disable the suspect's weapon without authorization. He was threatening to kill his ex-wife with a hunting rifle. September 22, 2023. Bank robbery. You engaged a fleeing suspect from an unauthorized position. He was firing on responding units. Harrison closed the second folder. And yesterday, October 14th, 2024. Unauthorized lethal force against a juvenile suspect. Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried an edge that hadn't been there before. In each of those situations, lives were saved because someone was willing to take action when action was needed. In each of those situations, you violated protocol and put the department at risk. And if I had followed protocol, how many people would be dead right now? Harrison's expression hardened. That's not your decision to make, detective. We have procedures for a reason. We have a chain of command for a reason. We have protocols that have been developed over decades of law enforcement experience. Protocols that assume perfect communication, unlimited time, and situations that unfold exactly as planned in training scenarios. Protocols that keep us alive and keep the department from getting sued into bankruptcy. Sarah leaned forward slightly. Chief, with respect, when you have 3 seconds to prevent a mass casualty event, protocols become academic. The only thing that matters is whether you can make the shot. And that attitude, detective, is exactly why you're sitting in this room. The silence stretched between them. Outside, a helicopter circled overhead. Probably traffic patrol or news media. Sarah watched its shadow move across the parking lot. Dark and quick, Harrison pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the table. Effective immediately, you're being removed from the SWAT team and reassigned to general investigations. Your weapon certification is suspended, pending completion of a psychological evaluation and additional training on protocol compliance. Sarah looked down at the transfer order. Her name was typed in block letters at the top, followed by a list of new duties that read like a punishment assignment. Background checks, fraud investigations, cold case reviews. Desk work for someone who had spent 4 years in tactical operations. How long? She asked. Minimum 6 months. After that, you can reapply for tactical assignments, assuming you complete the required training and demonstrate improved judgment. And my equipment? You'll turn in your tactical gear, scope, and specialized weapons to the armory today. You'll be issued standard detective equipment. Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected this outcome, but hearing it stated officially felt different than anticipating it. What about my current cases? Detective Rodriguez will take over your active investigations. You'll brief him this afternoon. Rodriguez has been on the team for 6 months. Rodriguez follows orders. The words stung more than they should have. Sarah had trained Rodriguez personally, spent weeks teaching him how to read wind patterns, how to account for elevation changes, how to control his breathing during long-duration surveillance. Now he would be taking her position because he knew how to say, "Yes, sir," at the right moments. Harrison stood up again, signaling that the meeting was over. "Sarah, this isn't personal. You're a good officer and a valuable member of this department. But you need to learn that individual excellence doesn't mean anything if you can't function as part of a team." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sarah picked up the transfer order and folded it neatly. "Is there anything else, Chief? Clean out your tactical locker by the end of the day. Report to Detective Division Monday morning at 0800 hours." She stood and walked toward the door, her footsteps silent on the industrial carpet. When she reached the threshold, she turned back. "Chief, can I ask you something?" Harrison was already reaching for another file. "What is it?" "When you were on patrol, before you moved to administration, did you ever have to make a split-second decision that saved someone's life?" He looked up, his expression unreadable, several times. "Did you ever have to choose between following protocol and preventing someone from getting killed?" Harrison was quiet for a moment. When he answered, his voice was softer than it had been during the entire meeting. "Yes." "What did you choose?" "I chose to save lives, Detective. And every time I did, I got called into a room just like this one to explain why I hadn't followed proper procedure." Sarah nodded. "Thank you for being honest." She left the room and walked down the hallway toward the tactical division. Officers she passed offered brief nods or avoided eye contact entirely. Word traveled fast in a department building. By now, everyone knew about her reassignment. The tactical locker room was empty when she arrived. Her gear hung in locker 23, organized exactly as she had left it that morning. Ghillie suit, rangefinder, cleaning kit, logbook, and the custom scope she had purchased with her own money after her department-issued equipment had proven inadequate for long-range precision work. She pulled out her phone and took pictures of her shooting logs. 4 years of recorded shots, weather conditions, target distances, and accuracy rates. Data that represented hundreds of hours of training, thousands of rounds fired, and situations where her skills had made the difference between life and death. Her hands moved mechanically through the process of inventory and equipment return. Each piece of gear went into a labeled bag, accompanied by the appropriate paperwork. The scope was the last item she handled. She held it for a moment, feeling its familiar weight, before placing it carefully in its protective case. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway as she was closing the final equipment bag. He was young, maybe 28, with the kind of eager expression that reminded her of herself 4 years earlier. "Martinez," he said quietly, "I wanted to say something before you left." Sarah looked up. "What's on your mind, Rodriguez?" "That shot you made yesterday. 420 meters, moving target, civilian background. I couldn't have made that shot. You'll get there." "It takes time." Rodriguez shook his head. "It's not about time. It's about instinct. You saw something the rest of us missed, and you acted on it. That kid would have killed people if you hadn't stopped him." Sarah finished packing her gear. "The department doesn't see it that way. The department doesn't have to live with the consequences of letting threats go unengaged." She stood up and shouldered her bag. "Rodriguez, let me give you some advice. Learn the protocols. Follow them exactly. Make sure you get authorization before you breathe, let alone shoot. Your career will last longer that way." "Is that what you wish you had done?" Sarah paused at the door. "I wish I lived in a world where protocols and reality aligned perfectly, but I don't. And neither do you." She left the tactical division and walked across the parking lot to her car. The afternoon sun reflected off windshields and chrome, creating a scattered pattern of light across the asphalt. She threw her gear bag into the trunk and sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her partner. Detective Chun, heard about the reassignment. Sorry, Martinez. Department's making a mistake, she typed back. It is what it is. Take care of yourself. Another message appeared immediately. You saved lives yesterday. That has to count for something. Sarah stared at the screen for a moment before responding, not according to the review board. She put the phone away and drove out of the parking lot, leaving the department building in her rearview mirror. The radio was playing something she didn't recognize. Instrumental music that seemed designed to fill space without demanding attention. At home, she hung her badge and service weapon in the bedroom safe and changed into civilian clothes. The house was quiet, too quiet after the constant noise of the department building. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at her neighbor's yard. Her laptop was still open on the counter, displaying an email from the department's training division about upcoming recertification courses. She closed it without reading the details. The transfer order was still folded in her pocket. She pulled it out and read through it again, noting the official language that transformed 4 years of tactical experience into a cautionary tale about the importance of following proper procedures. Outside, children were playing in the street, their voices carrying through the afternoon air. Their parents watched from porches and front yards, comfortable in the knowledge that their neighborhood was safe. None of them knew that yesterday, 17 people had gone home to similar scenes because someone had been willing to ignore protocol. When protocol would have gotten them killed, Sarah finished her coffee and put the cup in the sink. Monday morning, she would report to the detective division and begin investigating insurance fraud and embezzlement cases. She would follow proper procedures, obtain appropriate authorizations, and document every decision according to department standards. But she would also remember what it felt like to prevent a tragedy with a single shot at 420 meters. She would remember the weight of the rifle, the clarity of the scope, and the absolute certainty that had guided her finger to the trigger when 17 lives hung in the balance. That memory would have to be enough, because the department had made it clear that everything else was subject to review, revision, and removal. The transfer order went into a folder with her other personnel documents. Her shooting logs went into a different folder, one marked personal. And for the first time in 4 years, Detective Sarah Martinez went to sleep without her tactical gear within arm's reach, knowing that tomorrow she would begin learning how to be a different kind of police officer, the kind who followed orders instead of instincts, the kind who asked permission instead of taking action. The kind who prioritized protocol over results, but not the kind who forgot how to make the shots that mattered when everything else fell apart. Detective Division occupied the 3rd floor of the Municipal Justice Center, a building that had been modern in 1987, but now felt like a time capsule, wrapped in beige carpet and fluorescent lighting. Sarah's new desk sat in the corner near a window that faced the parking structure, offering a view of concrete levels and oil stains instead of the tactical training ground she had grown accustomed to. Monday morning arrived with the mechanical precision of government work. Sarah badged in at 0755 hours, 3 minutes ahead of her required reporting time, and found Detective Lieutenant Marcus Webb waiting by her assigned workspace. Webb was a 20-year veteran with graying temples and the kind of deliberate movements that suggested someone who had learned patience through necessity rather than nature. Martinez, he said, extending his hand. Welcome to the land of paper, trails and court subpoenas. Sarah shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the way his eyes assessed her without judgment. Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the division. Webb gestured toward the desk, which was already equipped with a computer terminal, phone, and stack of case files bound in manila folders. I'm not going to pretend this is where you want to be, Detective. I've read your file. I know what happened downstairs with SWAT. But I'm also not going to treat you like damaged goods or a punishment assignment. Sarah pulled out the chair and sat down, adjusting its height to accommodate her frame. The desk surface was clean, except for a welcome packet and a coffee mug with the department logo. "What can I expect here?" "Real police work," Webb said, settling into the chair across from her. "Different from tactical operations, but no less important. Insurance fraud costs this city millions of dollars annually. Identity theft ruins lives. Cold cases represent families who deserve answers. The work matters, even if it doesn't involve rifles and body armor." Sarah opened the welcome packet and scanned the first page, which outlined general responsibilities and reporting procedures. "What's my caseload?" Webb reached for the stack of folders and pulled out 3 files. "I'm starting you with manageable cases while you adjust to the new environment. First one is an embezzlement investigation at Morrison Construction Company. Controller suspected of skimming funds over an 18-month period. Second is a background check on a candidate for the City Planning Commission. Third is a cold case from 2019, missing a person named Jennifer Walsh." Sarah opened the embezzlement file and reviewed the initial complaint. Morrison Construction had reported discrepancies in their accounts payable system, with approximately $47,000 unaccounted for across multiple vendor payments. The paperwork included bank statements, employee records, and a timeline of suspicious transactions. "The Morrison case looks straightforward," she said, flipping through the documentation. "Have you identified the primary suspect?" Controller named Patricia Flores. She's been with the company for 6 years, recently went through a divorce, has access to the financial systems. Classic profile for internal theft. Webb pointed to a highlighted section in the file. "But the evidence is circumstantial. We need more than suspicious timing and financial pressure." Sarah made notes in the margin of the report. "What about digital forensics? Have we examined her computer access logs?" "That's where you come in. Your background includes computer systems. Correct? Basic training in digital evidence collection." "I handled cyber-related cases during my first 2 years in patrol." Sarah closed the file and opened the background check folder. "This candidate for Planning Commission, anything specific I should focus on?" Webb shrugged. "Standard vetting. Financial history, criminal background, personal associations. City Council wants to avoid any surprises after the appointment. Candidate's name is David Chun, owns a consulting firm that specializes in municipal development projects." Sarah paused. "Chun? Any relation to Detective Chun from SWAT?" "His older brother, why? Just making connections." Sarah set the background check aside and opened the cold case file. Jennifer Walsh's photograph stared back at her from the missing person report. Young woman, early 20s, dark hair, bright smile. She had disappeared from a downtown parking garage in March 2019. No witnesses, no surveillance footage, no indication of foul play beyond the simple fact that she had vanished. "What makes this case worth reopening?" Sarah asked. Webb's expression grew more serious. "New information. Jennifer's roommate contacted us last month. She found some letters hidden in Jennifer's belongings that suggest Jennifer was involved with someone she was afraid of. The roommate didn't come forward initially because Jennifer had made her promise to keep the relationship secret." Sarah studied the case file more carefully. The initial investigation had been thorough but limited by lack of evidence. Jennifer's car had been found in the parking garage where she worked as a legal assistant. Her purse was on the passenger seat, money and credit cards untouched. Security cameras in the garage had malfunctioned the week before her disappearance. "Convenient timing on the camera failure," Sarah observed. That's what the original investigators thought. But the security company confirmed it was a legitimate equipment malfunction, not sabotage. Jennifer just had bad luck. Sarah made a note to interview the roommate and review the letters. Cold cases appealed to her investigative instincts in a way that routine background checks couldn't. There was something satisfying about the challenge of reconstructing events from incomplete information. The morning passed quickly as Sarah familiarized herself with department procedures for detective division. The work was methodical, requiring patience and attention to detail rather than split-second decision-making. She found herself appreciating the change of pace, even if she missed the adrenaline of tactical operations. At 10:30 hours, Detective James Murphy approached her desk carrying a coffee cup and wearing the kind of smile that suggested he enjoyed being the bearer of interesting news. Murphy was younger than Sarah, probably early 30s, with red hair and freckles that made him look like he should be coaching Little League instead of investigating felonies. "Martinez, right?" he said, extending his free hand. "Jim Murphy. I handle most of the fraud cases around here." Sarah shook his hand and gestured toward the Morrison construction file. "I'm working on the embezzlement case at Morrison." "Lieutenant, Webb said you might have some background on similar cases." Murphy pulled up a chair and sat down. "Patricia Flores. Yeah, I know that case. Been watching it develop for about 2 months. The thing is, I don't think she's working alone." Sarah looked up from her notes. "What makes you say that?" "The sophistication of the scheme. Flores has access to the accounts payable system, but she doesn't have the technical knowledge to manipulate the digital records the way they've been altered. Someone with serious computer skills is helping her." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "Any suspects? That's where it gets interesting." Murphy opened his notebook and flipped to a marked page. Morrison Construction uses an external IT contractor for their network maintenance. Company called Tech Solutions, owned by a guy named Martin Torres. Torres has been doing work for Morrison for about 2 years, which coincides with when the discrepancies started. Sarah made notes as Murphy spoke. "Have you interviewed Torres?" "Not yet. I've been building the case methodically, documenting the financial irregularities before approaching potential suspects. But I think you might be the right person to handle the technical aspects of the investigation." "Why is that?" Murphy's smile widened. "Because Lieutenant Webb mentioned you have experience with complex situations that require precision and patience." Sarah understood the subtext. Webb had assigned her to cases that would utilize her analytical skills without putting her in situations where she might be tempted to act independently. It was a careful balance between keeping her engaged and keeping her controlled. "I'll review the digital evidence and coordinate with the IT contractor," Sarah said. "What about the timeline for the investigation?" "No rush. These financial cases take months to develop properly. We want to make sure we have everything documented before we move to arrests." Murphy finished his coffee and stood up. "One more thing, Martinez. I heard about what happened with SWAT. For what it's worth, I think the department made a mistake." "Your record speaks for itself," Sarah nodded her appreciation. "Thanks, Murphy. I'm focused on doing good work here in the detective division." "Good to hear. And if you need anything on the Morrison case, just let me know. I've been working on financial crimes for 5 years, so I know where the bodies are buried, so to speak." After Murphy left, Sarah spent the rest of the morning reviewing the Morrison construction case in detail. The embezzlement scheme was more sophisticated than she had initially realized. Whoever was manipulating the financial records had knowledge of both the company's internal procedures and the software systems used to process payments. She made a list of questions for Patricia Flores and Martin Torres, then began researching Tech Solutions to understand their business model and client base. A simple internet search revealed that Torres owned a legitimate IT consulting firm with 12 employees and contracts with several local businesses. At 1200 hours, Lieutenant Webb stopped by her desk. "How's the first morning going?" "Good. I'm getting familiar with the cases and starting to see some interesting patterns." Sarah showed him her notes on the Morrison investigation. "Detective, Murphy thinks Patricia Flores has an accomplice with technical skills. I'm inclined to agree. Webb reviewed her analysis. Solid work. What's your next step? I'd like to interview Flores first, get her baseline responses on record before approaching Torres. If there's a conspiracy, I want to understand her perspective before she has a chance to coordinate with her potential accomplice. Approved. Schedule the interview for this week. Webb paused. Martinez, I want you to know that I requested you for my division specifically. Your analytical skills and attention to detail are exactly what we need for complex investigations. Sarah looked up, surprised. You requested me? Chief Harrison asked for recommendations on where to place you after the SWAT reassignment. I told him the detective division would benefit from your experience. Webb's expression was serious. I don't care about the politics or the controversy. I care about having good investigators working cases that matter to this community. Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate the confidence. Earn it by doing the work. These cases may not be as dramatic as tactical operations, but they require the same precision and dedication. After Webb left, Sarah returned to the Jennifer Walsh cold case file. She read through the original investigation reports, witness statements, and evidence inventory. The case had been handled competently, but the investigators had been limited by the lack of physical evidence and witnesses. The breakthrough might come from the letters that Jennifer's roommate had discovered. Sarah made a note to schedule an interview with the roommate for later in the week. After she had thoroughly reviewed all the existing case material, her phone rang at 1400 hours. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. Detective Martinez, this is Officer Lisa Parker from the 4th Precinct. I understand you're handling the Jennifer Walsh cold case. Sarah grabbed her notebook. That's correct. What can I do? For you, Officer Parker. I was one of the responding officers when Jennifer was reported missing. I've been following the case informally over the years, and I heard it was being reopened. I wanted to let you know about something I observed during the initial investigation. I'm listening. Jennifer's supervisor at the law firm, a guy named Robert Klein, seemed nervous during his interview. More nervous than the situation warranted. At the time, I thought it was just normal stress about having an employee disappear, but looking back, his behavior struck me as evasive. Sarah made notes as Parker spoke. Was Klein interviewed thoroughly? Standard. Questions about Jennifer's work performance. Any problems with clients or co-workers, her general demeanor in the days before she disappeared. He gave appropriate answers, but his body language suggested he was holding something back. Why didn't you include this observation in your report? Parker was quiet for a moment. Honestly? Because I was a rookie officer, and Klein was a respected attorney. I didn't feel like my instincts carried much weight compared to his reputation in the community. Sarah understood the dynamic. Young officers learned quickly that challenging established community figures required substantial evidence and careful handling. Would you be willing to provide a supplemental statement about your observations? Absolutely. I've regretted not being more assertive during the original investigation. I'll be in touch this week to get your statement on record. After ending the call, Sarah added Robert Klein to her list of people to re-interview for the Walsh case. The original investigation had focused primarily on Jennifer's personal relationships and activities outside of work. If Klein had been holding back information about Jennifer's professional environment, it could represent a significant gap in the case development. The afternoon passed with Sarah, continuing to review case files and familiarize herself with detective division procedures. The work environment was quieter than SWAT, with less urgency and more methodical investigation techniques. She found herself appreciating the opportunity to dig deeper into complex cases, rather than responding to immediate tactical situations. At 16:30 hours, she began organizing her desk and preparing to leave for the day. The Morrison construction case would require interviews with both Patricia Flores and Martin Torres. The Jennifer Walsh case needed fresh interviews with the roommate, Officer Parker, and potentially Robert Klein. The background check on David Chun appeared straightforward, but would require thorough documentation. Detective Murphy stopped by her desk as she was gathering her materials. Heading out? Finishing up for the day. I've got interviews to schedule for the Morrison case. Murphy nodded approvingly. Good approach. Building a solid foundation before moving to confrontational interviews. He paused. Martinez, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you miss it? The tactical work? Sarah considered the question carefully. One missed certain aspects of it. The clarity of purpose, the immediate impact, the feeling that your skills could make a real difference in critical situations. But this work has its own rewards. These cases affect people's lives in different ways. Patricia Flores might be stealing money that could have gone to worker salaries or community projects. Jennifer Walsh's family deserves to know what happened to their daughter. The work matters just differently. Murphy smiled. That's a healthy perspective. A lot of officers struggle with reassignments, especially when they feel like they're being punished. I'm not being punished, Sarah said, though she wasn't entirely convinced of her own words. I'm being redirected. Well, if you need any help navigating the bureaucracy here, let me know. Detective Division has its own culture, and it takes time to learn the unwritten rules. Sarah thanked him and left the building, walking across the parking lot to her car as the afternoon sun cast long shadows between the vehicles. The workday had been productive and engaging, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being carefully managed rather than simply reassigned. Lieutenant Webb's comment about requesting her specifically suggested that her placement in the Detective Division was more strategic than punitive. The cases she had been assigned required analytical skills and patience, but they also kept her away from situations where she might be tempted to act independently. At home, she reviewed her notes from the day and began planning her investigation strategy for the coming week. The Morrison construction case offered the most immediate potential for results, while the Jennifer Walsh cold case represented a longer-term challenge that could provide significant closure for the victim's family. She fell asleep that night, thinking about patterns and evidence, about the way information could be assembled into a coherent narrative that revealed truth. It was different from the immediate clarity of a rifle scope, but it required the same fundamental skills: observation, analysis, and the patience to wait for the right moment to act. Tomorrow would bring interviews and evidence review, the methodical work of building cases that could stand up to legal scrutiny. It wasn't the work she had trained for, but it was work that mattered, and for now, that would have to be enough. 3 weeks into her assignment with Detective Division, Sarah had established a rhythm that felt both familiar and foreign. She arrived each morning at 0730 hours, 30 minutes before her required start time, and used those extra minutes to review her active cases while the office was still quiet. The coffee maker in the break room became her first stop, followed by a systematic check of overnight communications and evidence updates. The Morrison construction embezzlement case had developed into something more complex than anyone had initially anticipated. Patricia Flores had agreed to an interview scheduled for Thursday morning at 0900 hours. Sarah spent Tuesday evening preparing her questions, focusing on timeline discrepancies and access patterns that would reveal whether Flores was working alone or with accomplices. Wednesday morning brought unexpected developments. Sarah was reviewing financial records when Detective Murphy approached her desk carrying a folder thick with printouts and looking like someone who had discovered something significant, but wasn't quite sure what to do with the information. Martinez, I need to show you something, Murphy said, pulling up a chair and spreading documents across her desk. The Tech Solutions angle on the Morrison case just got more interesting. Sarah set aside her coffee and focused on the paperwork Murphy was organizing. Bank statements, invoice copies, and what appeared to be email printouts formed distinct piles across her workspace. What am I looking at? she asked. Martin Torres, the IT contractor we suspected might be helping Flores. I did some background research on his company's financial records. Murphy pointed to a series of highlighted entries on the bank statements. Tech Solutions has been receiving payments from Morrison Construction that don't match any work orders or service contracts. Sarah studied the figures. Regular monthly payments of $3,200 occurring on the 15th of each month for the past 18 months. The amounts were substantial, but not large enough to trigger automatic audit flags. Have you correlated these payments with the missing funds from Morrison's accounts? She asked. Murphy nodded. That's where it gets interesting. The payments to Tech Solutions account for about 60% of the missing money. The rest appears to be going directly to Flores through manipulated vendor payments. Sarah pulled out a calculator and ran the numbers. So we're looking at a conspiracy where Torres is taking the larger share, but Flores is handling the actual financial manipulation. Exactly, and there's more. Murphy handed her a set of email printouts. I got a warrant for Torres's business email account. He's been communicating with someone about special projects that don't appear on any official work orders. Sarah read through the emails, noting the careful language that avoided explicit references to illegal activity, but clearly indicated coordination on unauthorized work. The correspondence was primarily with an account registered to PF_Morrison_admin, which almost certainly belonged to Patricia Flores. This changes our interview strategy, Sarah said. If we confront Flores about the conspiracy directly, she might shut down or demand legal representation before we can gather additional evidence. Murphy agreed. I was thinking we could approach it as a routine follow-up on the original complaint. Let her think we're still focused on simple embezzlement rather than organized fraud. Sarah made notes in her case file, adjusting her planned questions to account for the new information. The interview with Flores would require careful handling to extract information without revealing the scope of their investigation. What about Torres? Are you planning to interview him separately? After we talk to Flores, I want to see how much she reveals about their arrangement before we bring him in. The remainder of Wednesday was spent preparing for the Flores interview and reviewing evidence for the Jennifer Walsh cold case. Sarah had scheduled an interview with Jennifer's former roommate, Angela Vasquez, for Friday afternoon. The letters that Angela had discovered could provide crucial insights into Jennifer's state of mind and relationships during the period before her disappearance. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made Sarah miss outdoor tactical training. She arrived at the office early, as usual, and spent time reviewing her interview questions for Patricia Flores. The conference room had been reserved for 0900 hours, equipped with recording equipment and comfortable chairs, designed to encourage conversation rather than confrontation. Patricia Flores arrived 5 minutes early, accompanied by a woman who introduced herself as Helen Morrison, the owner of Morrison Construction. Sarah hadn't expected the company owner to attend the interview, but she adjusted her approach to accommodate the additional witness. Flores was younger than Sarah had anticipated, probably early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a professional style and the kind of nervous energy that suggested someone under significant stress. She wore a navy blue business suit and carried a leather portfolio that she clutched throughout the introductions. Miss Flores, thank you for agreeing to speak with us, Sarah began, activating the recording equipment. This interview is being recorded for accuracy. You're here voluntarily, and you're free to leave at any time. Do you understand? Flores nodded. Yes, I understand. Sarah opened her case file and reviewed the basic facts about the financial discrepancies at Morrison Construction. Miss Flores, as the controller for Morrison Construction, you have access to the accounts payable system, correct? Yes, that's part of my job responsibilities. Can you walk me through the typical process for approving vendor payments? Flores explained the procedure methodically, describing how work orders were generated, invoices were received and verified, and payments were processed through the electronic banking system. Her explanation was thorough and technically accurate, suggesting genuine knowledge of the company's financial procedures. Sarah made notes as Flores spoke, looking for inconsistencies or gaps in the process that could explain how unauthorized payments were being made. Who else has access to the accounts payable system? Just me and Mrs. Morrison. We're the only ones with administrator privileges. Helen Morrison, who had been silent during the technical discussion, spoke up. Detective, I want to be clear that I have complete confidence in Patricia. She's been with our company for 6 years, and her work has always been exemplary. Sarah nodded diplomatically. We're just trying to understand how these discrepancies occurred. Ms. Flores, are you familiar with Tech Solutions, the IT contractor that provides network maintenance for Morrison Construction? Flores hesitated for just a moment before answering. Yes, Martin Torres and his team handle our computer systems and network security. How often do they perform work for your company? Usually once or twice a month for routine maintenance. More frequently if we have technical problems. Sarah consulted her notes. According to our records, Tech Solutions has been receiving monthly payments of $3,200 for the past 18 months. Can you explain what services justify that level of compensation? The question clearly caught Flores off guard. She glanced at Helen Morrison before answering. I'd have to review the work orders to give you specific details about their services. Ms. Flores, do you communicate with Martin Torres directly about technical issues or payment processing? Another hesitation. Sometimes. If there are questions about invoices or scheduling. Sarah decided to test Flores' knowledge about the email communications that Murphy had discovered. Do you use a specific email account for coordinating with vendors like Tech Solutions? I have a company email account that I use for all business communications. Is that the only email account you use for the Morrison Construction business? Flores shifted in her chair. I sometimes use different email addresses for different types of communications, depending on the vendor's preferences. Sarah made a note and moved to a different line of questioning. Ms. Flores, have you experienced any significant personal financial stress in the past 2 years? Helen Morrison looked surprised by the question. Detective, I'm not sure how Patricia's personal finances are relevant to this investigation. We're trying to understand all factors that might be relevant to the financial discrepancies, Sarah explained. Ms. Flores, you went through a divorce approximately 14 months ago, correct? Flores's voice became quieter. Yes, that's correct. Did the divorce proceedings create financial pressure for you? The divorce was expensive, and I did have some temporary financial difficulties. But that doesn't mean I would steal from my employer. Sarah noted the defensive tone and decided to shift back to technical questions. Ms. Flores, when Tech Solutions performs work for Morrison Construction, do you personally verify that the work was completed before processing payment? Usually, yes. Although sometimes Mrs. Morrison handles the verification directly. Helen Morrison nodded. I work closely with our vendors to ensure we're getting value for our payments. Sarah spent the next 30 minutes reviewing specific transactions and payment authorizations, looking for patterns that might reveal how unauthorized payments were being processed. Flores answered most questions directly, but Sarah noticed increasing tension in her responses when the discussion focused on Tech Solutions. Ms. Flores, is there anything else you think we should know about the financial procedures at Morrison Construction or your interactions with vendors? Flores was quiet for a moment. Detective, I want to help resolve these discrepancies. Morrison Construction is a good company, and Mrs. Morrison has been very supportive during my personal difficulties. If there are problems with our financial systems, I want to identify and fix them. Sarah concluded the interview at 10:15 hours, thanking both women for their cooperation. After they left, she reviewed her notes and compared them with the evidence that Murphy had gathered about the Tech Solutions Payments. Flores had been evasive about her communications with Torres, but she hadn't denied the relationship entirely. The nervous energy and defensive responses suggested someone under pressure, but they could indicate guilty knowledge or simply stress about being investigated. Murphy joined her in the conference room after the interview concluded. "How did it go?" "Interesting." Flores admits to communicating with Torres, but she's being careful about the details. "She's definitely nervous, but I can't tell if it's guilt or just normal stress about being questioned." Murphy reviewed Sarah's notes. "Did she explain the monthly payments to Tech Solutions?" "She said she'd have to review work orders to provide specific details." "That could be legitimate, or it could be a way to avoid giving answers she knows would be problematic." "What's your assessment?" Sarah organized her notes while considering the question. "I think she's involved, but I'm not convinced she's the primary architect of the scheme. Her responses suggest someone who's following instructions rather than someone who developed the plan independently." Murphy nodded. "That matches my impression from the financial analysis. The sophistication of the digital manipulation suggests someone with advanced technical skills, which Flores doesn't appear to have." "What about Torres? When are you planning to interview him?" "Next week. I want to give Flores time to communicate with him about our interview today. If they're working together, he might make some revealing contacts or take actions that provide additional evidence." Sarah spent the afternoon reviewing the David Chun background check, which had proven to be routine and straightforward. Chun's financial history, criminal background, and professional associations all appeared appropriate for a city planning commission appointment. She completed the investigation report and submitted it to Lieutenant Webb for final review. Friday afternoon brought the interview with Angela Vasquez, Jennifer Walsh's former roommate. Angela arrived at the office carrying a small box that contained the letters she had discovered among Jennifer's belongings. Angela was in her late 20s, with blonde hair and the kind of tired expression that suggested someone who had been carrying a burden for several years. She set the box on the conference room table and looked at Sarah with obvious relief. "I'm glad someone is finally looking into Jennifer's disappearance again," Angela said. "I felt guilty for years about not coming forward with these letters sooner." Sarah opened the box and found approximately a dozen handwritten letters, some on personal stationery and others on plain paper. The handwriting was feminine and neat. Clearly, Jennifer's based on comparison with known writing samples from the original investigation. "Angela, can you tell me about your relationship with Jennifer and why she asked you to keep these letters secret?" Angela settled into her chair and took a deep breath. "Jennifer and I were roommates for about 2 years before she disappeared. We were close friends, but she was very private about her personal relationships. About 6 months before she disappeared, she started receiving letters from someone she was romantically involved with." Sarah examined the first letter, noting the formal tone and expensive stationery. "Did Jennifer tell you who was sending these letters?" "Not directly. She just said she was seeing someone who had to keep the relationship private because of his position in the community. She seemed excited about the relationship at first, but later she became worried about it." Sarah read through several of the letters, noting references to clandestine meetings and expressions of affection, mixed with concerns about secrecy. The writing style suggested an educated person, possibly someone in a professional position. "Angela, did Jennifer ever express fear about this relationship or indicate that she felt threatened?" Angela's expression grew more serious. "In the weeks before she disappeared, Jennifer seemed anxious about something. She mentioned that her boyfriend was becoming possessive and didn't want her talking to other men, even casually. She said he had started checking up on her at work and asking detailed questions about her daily activities." Sarah made notes while reviewing more of the letters. "Did Jennifer ever mention her boyfriend's profession or any specific details about his identity?" "She said he was an attorney and that he worked downtown. She also mentioned that he was married, which was why They had to keep the relationship secret. The information aligned with Officer Parker's observation about Robert Klein's nervous behavior during the original investigation. If Klein had been having an affair with Jennifer, it would explain his evasiveness and provide a potential motive. For her disappearance, Sarah spent an hour reviewing all the letters with Angela, documenting their contents and establishing a timeline for the relationship. The letters revealed a pattern of increasing possessiveness and control, with the boyfriend making demands about Jennifer's social activities and professional interactions. "Angela, why did Jennifer ask you to keep these letters secret?" She was afraid that if the relationship became public, it would ruin his career and his marriage. She cared about him, but she was also starting to realize that the secrecy was becoming unhealthy. Sarah concluded the interview by collecting the letters as evidence and obtaining Angela's contact information for follow-up questions. The new information provided a significant lead in the Jennifer Walsh case, potentially identifying both a suspect and a motive for her disappearance. The week ended with Sarah feeling more confident about her role in Detective Division. The Morrison construction case was developing into a complex fraud investigation that would require coordinated interviews and evidence analysis. The Jennifer Walsh cold case had been revitalized with new evidence that could lead to a breakthrough. As she organized her desk Friday evening, Sarah reflected on the differences between tactical operations and investigative work. Both required patience, attention to detail, and the ability to analyze complex situations under pressure. The timescales were different, but the fundamental skills were transferable. Lieutenant Webb stopped by her desk as she was preparing to leave. "How was your week, Martinez?" "Productive." The Morrison case is more complex than initially reported, and the Walsh cold case has developed some promising leads. Webb reviewed her progress reports. "Good work. You're adapting well to investigative procedures." He paused. "Martinez, I want you to know that your analytical approach to these cases has been impressive. You're building solid foundations for prosecution." Sarah appreciated the feedback. "Thank you, Lieutenant. The work is engaging, and I'm learning to appreciate the methodical approach required for complex investigations. Keep it up. These cases matter to the community, and your attention to detail is making a difference." Sarah left the office that evening feeling more optimistic about her career trajectory than she had since the SWAT reassignment. Detective Division offered different challenges and rewards, but it was still meaningful police work that utilized her skills and served the public interest. The weekend would provide time to review case files and prepare for the upcoming interviews with Martin Torres and Robert Klein. Both conversations would require careful preparation and strategic questioning to extract information without alerting suspects to the scope of the investigations. As she drove home through the evening traffic, Sarah found herself thinking about patterns and evidence, about the way seemingly unrelated information could be assembled into coherent narratives that revealed truth. It was different from the immediate clarity of tactical situations, but it required the same fundamental commitment to precision and thoroughness. She was beginning to understand that Detective Division wasn't a punishment assignment or a dead-end career move. It was simply a different application of the same skills that had made her effective in tactical operations: observation, analysis, patience, and the determination to see complex situations through to resolution. Monday would bring new challenges and opportunities to demonstrate those skills in service of justice and public safety. Tuesday morning started like any other workday until the radio in Lieutenant Webb's office began crackling with urgent transmissions at 0947 hours. Sarah was reviewing interview transcripts when the unmistakable tension of emergency communications cut through the normal office atmosphere. Webb emerged from his office, radio in hand, his expression shifting from routine administrative focus to operational alertness. "All units, we have a hostage situation in progress at Meridian Financial Plaza. 1247 Commerce Street. The dispatcher's voice carried across the detective division. Multiple hostages confirmed. Armed suspect barricaded on the 7th floor. SWAT team is responding. Sarah's head lifted from her paperwork. Meridian Financial Plaza housed several law firms, accounting offices, and consulting businesses. The building was a downtown high-rise with limited access points and clear sight. Lines from surrounding structures. Her tactical mind automatically began analyzing the operational challenges such a location would present. Webb approached her desk, still monitoring radio traffic. Martinez, I know you're thinking about this tactically. Don't. I understand. Lieutenant, I'm serious. You're in the detective division now. This isn't your operation. Sarah nodded and returned her attention to the Morrison construction case files, but she couldn't ignore the continuing radio chatter that provided updates on the developing situation. SWAT units were establishing a perimeter. The hostage negotiator was en route. Building management was providing floor plans and access codes. 20 minutes later, Detective Murphy rushed into the office carrying his jacket and car keys. Martinez, we need to go. Now. Sarah looked up confused. What's happening? The hostage situation at Meridian Plaza. The suspect is holding people in the law offices of Klein, Morrison and Associates. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. Robert Klein. The same Robert Klein from your Jennifer Walsh investigation. And it gets worse. Murphy was already heading toward the door. The suspect is Martin Torres from Tech Solutions. He's demanding to speak with Detective Martinez specifically. Webb overheard the conversation and approached rapidly. What do you mean he's asking for Martinez specifically? Murphy pulled out his phone and showed them a text message from the incident commander. Torres has 4 hostages in Klein's conference room. He says he'll only negotiate with the detective who's been investigating his business dealings. He knows Martinez by name. Sarah stood up, her mind racing through the implications. Torres had somehow learned about their investigation into the Morrison construction embezzlement. If he was holding hostages at Klein's law firm, there might be connections between the financial fraud case and Jennifer Walsh's disappearance that they hadn't yet discovered. Lieutenant, I need to respond to this, Sarah said. Webb shook his head. You're not trained for hostage negotiation, Martinez. This isn't a tactical operation. But I'm the only one who understands the full scope of the investigation that apparently triggered this situation. The negotiator will need background information about Torres's motivations and the cases he's connected to. Murphy supported her assessment. She's right, Lieutenant. If Torres is demanding to speak with her specifically, there's something about the investigation that we don't understand yet. Webb was quiet for a moment, weighing the operational risks against the investigative advantages of having Sarah present. Fine, but you're going as an information resource for the negotiator, not as a primary communicator with the suspect. Sarah grabbed her jacket and badge, leaving her case files secured on her desk. As they walked rapidly toward the parking garage, Murphy briefed her on what they knew about the situation. Torres entered the Klein law firm at approximately 0930 hours, claiming to have a scheduled appointment. He was carrying a briefcase and appeared calm. Once inside the conference room with Klein and 3 other people, he produced a handgun and announced that no one would be leaving until he spoke with Detective Martinez. Sarah fastened her seatbelt as Murphy started the car. What's Torres's connection to Klein beyond the fact that they're both linked to our investigations? That's what we need to figure out. Klein's law firm handles corporate contracts and business litigation. It's possible Torres used their services for Tech Solutions, or there might be a connection to the Morrison construction fraud that we haven't identified. They drove through downtown traffic with lights and sirens, reaching the perimeter that had been established around Meridian Financial Plaza in 12 minutes. The scene was controlled chaos, with marked patrol cars blocking intersections, emergency vehicles positioned strategically, and SWAT personnel establishing overwatch positions on adjacent buildings. Incident Commander Captain Frank Reeves met them at the mobile command post, a converted RV equipped with communication equipment and tactical displays. Reeves was a veteran with 25 years of experience who had handled dozens of hostage situations. His demeanor was calm but focused, projecting the kind of steady authority that helped maintain order during crisis operations. "Detective Martinez," Reeves said, shaking her hand. "Torres has mentioned you by name 3 times in the past hour. What's your connection to this individual?" Sarah explained the Morrison Construction embezzlement investigation and the evidence suggesting Torres's involvement in financial fraud. She also mentioned the potential connection to Robert Klein through the Jennifer Walsh cold case. Though those links were still speculative, Reeves absorbed the information quickly. So Torres might be facing federal fraud charges, and Klein might be connected to a missing person case. Both investigations could threaten their careers and freedom. "That's a reasonable assessment," Sarah agreed. "But I don't understand why Torres would escalate to hostage-taking. The evidence against him is substantial but not overwhelming. A competent attorney could probably negotiate a plea agreement." Detective Lisa Chang, the department's primary hostage negotiator, joined their discussion. Chang was in her early 40s, with the kind of calm presence that made her effective at de-escalating volatile situations. She had been monitoring Torres's communications and observing his behavior through building security cameras. "Torres is agitated but not erratic," Chang reported. "He's making rational demands and responding appropriately to basic questions about the hostage's welfare. This doesn't appear to be a spontaneous breakdown or mental health crisis." Sarah studied the building layout on the tactical display. Klein's law firm occupied the entire 7th floor, with conference rooms facing east toward the financial district. The conference room where Torres was holding hostages had floor-to-ceiling windows that provided excellent visibility from adjacent buildings. "What's Torres's tactical position?" Sarah asked. Captain Reeves pointed to the building schematic. "He's positioned himself with clear sight lines to the elevator bank and stairwell access. The hostages are seated around the conference table, which provides him cover from the windows while allowing him to control their movements." Sarah noted the positioning and sight lines instinctively, her tactical training automatically analyzing the operational environment. The conference room's layout would make a direct assault extremely risky for the hostages. Torres had chosen his position intelligently, suggesting prior planning rather than desperate improvisation. "Has he made any specific demands beyond speaking with me?" Sarah asked. Chang consulted her notes. "He wants the investigation into tech solutions suspended pending resolution of what he calls false accusations. He also wants assurance that Robert Klein won't be charged with any crimes related to Jennifer Walsh's disappearance." The demands confirmed Sarah's suspicion that Torres and Klein were connected beyond simple attorney-client relationships. Torres wouldn't be concerned about Klein's legal exposure unless they were collaborating or Klein possessed information that could implicate Torres in additional crimes. "Captain, I think Torres and Klein are working together on something beyond the Morrison Construction fraud," Sarah said. Klein's nervous behavior during the original Walsh investigation, combined with Torres's concern about Klein's legal exposure, suggests a deeper conspiracy. Reeves nodded. "That's valuable intelligence for the negotiation strategy." "Chang, what's your assessment of Torres's state of mind?" "He's focused and purposeful, but I detect increasing stress in his voice. He's checking his watch frequently and asking about Detective Martinez's arrival time. I think he has a timeline he's working toward." Sarah felt a chill of recognition. "A timeline for what?" Chang shrugged. "Unknown, but his urgency suggests this isn't an open-ended standoff. He's planning something, and he needs to communicate with you before implementing whatever he has in mind." Captain Reeves made a decision. "Martinez, I want you to monitor the negotiation and provide background information as needed. But you're not communicating directly with Torres unless Chang determines it's operationally necessary. Sarah agreed to the restrictions, though she found herself analyzing the tactical situation with increasing concern. Torres's positioning, his apparent planning, and his specific demands suggested someone executing a predetermined strategy rather than someone who had lost control of events. 11:30 hours. Torres's voice crackled through the communication system for the first time since Sarah's arrival. "This is Martin Torres. I know Detective Martinez is here now. I can see the activity around the command post." Chang keyed her microphone. "Mr. Torres, this is Detective Chang. Detective Martinez is present, but we need to establish some ground. Rules for communication. First, I need confirmation that all hostages are unharmed." "The hostages are fine. Mr. Klein is actually being very cooperative in explaining some interesting facts about his business relationships." Sarah leaned forward, noting the implication that Klein was providing information willingly rather than under duress. If Klein was cooperating with Torres, it suggested they were allies rather than adversaries. Chang continued the dialogue. "Mr. Torres, what do you need to discuss with Detective Martinez that requires this level of urgency?" "Detective Martinez has been investigating financial irregularities that she believes implicate me in criminal activity. What she doesn't understand is that those irregularities were designed to conceal something much more serious than embezzlement." Sarah felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to align. If Torres had been manipulating Morrison Construction's financial records to hide evidence of other crimes, it would explain the sophistication of the scheme and his willingness to take extreme risks to stop the investigation. Torres continued speaking. "Mr. Klein has been helping me understand the legal implications of Detective Martinez's investigation. We've concluded that full disclosure is preferable to continued concealment, but we need assurance that our cooperation will be considered during any subsequent legal proceedings." Chang looked at Captain Reeves, who nodded his approval for continued dialogue. "Mr. Torres, what type of disclosure are you prepared to make?" "Information about Jennifer Walsh's disappearance, details about financial crimes involving multiple businesses in this city, and evidence of corruption within the municipal government that goes back several years." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. If Torres possessed information about Jennifer Walsh, it confirmed Klein's involvement in her disappearance. If the financial crimes extended beyond Morrison Construction, it suggested a broader conspiracy. And if municipal corruption was involved, it could implicate city officials and create significant political consequences. Captain Reeves whispered to Chang, "Find out what he wants in exchange for this information." Chang keyed her microphone. "Mr. Torres, what assurances do you need in order to share this information?" "I want Detective Martinez to come to the conference room so I can explain the full scope of what we've discovered. I need her to understand that stopping her investigation now will prevent exposure of crimes that go far beyond anything she's currently investigating." Sarah felt her tactical instincts activate. Torres was essentially demanding that she enter a confined space with an armed individual who was clearly desperate. From a negotiation standpoint, it was an unacceptable risk. From an investigative standpoint, it might represent the only opportunity to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Captain Reeves shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. We don't put investigators in direct contact with armed suspects." Chang continued the negotiation. "Mr. Torres, Detective Martinez can hear everything you say from her current location. You can share information without requiring face-to-face contact. The information is too sensitive for radio transmission. There are people listening to these communications who are implicated in the crimes I'm prepared to discuss." The statement sent a chill through the command post. If Torres was correct about compromised communications, it meant someone with access to police frequencies was involved in the conspiracy. It also meant that continuing the negotiation over radio could alert co-conspirators to take action to protect themselves. Sarah studied the building layout again, noting the tactical challenges and opportunities. Captain, what if we establish a secure communication channel? Torres has legitimate concerns about radio intercepts if municipal corruption is involved. Captain Reeves considered the suggestion. What are you thinking? Cell phone contact directly. Between Torres and me, with Chang monitoring. No radio traffic about sensitive details until we understand the scope of what we're dealing with. Chang nodded her agreement. That would address Torres's security concerns while maintaining operational control of the situation. Reeves was quiet for a moment, weighing risks and benefits. Martinez, you understand that once we establish direct communication, Torres may try to manipulate you into making commitments the department can't honor. I understand. But if he has information about Jennifer Walsh and broader criminal activity, we need to hear it before the situation escalates further. At 11:47 hours, Chang called Torres and explained the secure communication option. Torres agreed immediately, providing a cell phone number and requesting that Sarah call within 5 minutes. Sarah dialed the number while Captain Reeves and Chang monitored through speakerphone. Torres answered on the first ring. Detective Martinez, thank you for calling. I apologize for the dramatic circumstances, but I needed to ensure we could communicate without interference. Sarah kept her voice calm and professional. Mr. Torres, I'm listening. But first, I need confirmation that the hostages are safe and will remain unharmed regardless of our conversation. The hostages are safe. In fact, Mr. Klein is eager to cooperate fully with your investigation once he understands the protection arrangements we'll need. Sarah exchanged glances with Captain Reeves. What kind of protection arrangements? Detective Martinez, 3 years ago, Jennifer Walsh discovered evidence of a municipal contract fraud scheme involving multiple city departments. She was killed to prevent her from reporting what she had learned. The financial irregularities you've been investigating were designed to conceal payments to the people who arranged her murder. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Jennifer Walsh hadn't simply disappeared. She had been murdered to protect a corruption scheme. The embezzlement case wasn't just financial fraud. It was part of a cover-up for homicide. Torres continued. Mr. Klein was blackmailed into providing legal services to conceal the fraud scheme. I was coerced into manipulating financial records to hide the payments. We've been trying to find a way to expose the truth without getting ourselves killed. Sarah felt her understanding of both cases completely reorganize around this new information. Who ordered Jennifer's murder? Deputy Chief Harrison was the primary coordinator, but the scheme involves people throughout city government. The contracts being manipulated are worth millions of dollars annually. Sarah's world tilted. Harrison had been the one who removed her from SWAT, who had questioned her judgment, who had access to all department communications and operations. If he was involved in murder and corruption, it explained why Torres was afraid to trust normal investigative channels. Mr. Torres, do you have evidence to support these accusations? Jennifer Walsh gathered extensive documentation before she was killed. I've been hiding that evidence for 3 years, waiting for someone I could trust to investigate properly. Your willingness to act independently during the pharmacy shooting convinced me that you might be different from other officers in this department. Sarah realized that her supposed disciplinary action had actually been Harrison's attempt to neutralize someone who might uncover his criminal activities. Her reassignment to Detective Division hadn't been punishment. It had been damage control. What do you need from me? Sarah asked. I need you to understand that your life is in danger once this information becomes public. Harrison has been monitoring your investigation, and he knows you're getting close to discovering the truth. As if summoned by Torres's words, Sarah noticed Deputy Chief Harrison's vehicle pulling up to the perimeter. He was arriving at the hostage scene personally, which was unusual for someone in his administrative position. "Mr. Torres," Sarah said quietly, "Deputy Chief Harrison just arrived on scene." "Then we're out of time." "Detective Martinez, everything I've told you is documented in a storage unit at Metro Storage on Industrial Boulevard. Unit 247. The key is taped under Mr. Klein's desk drawer. If something happens to me, you'll need that evidence to protect yourself and expose the truth." Sarah watched Harrison approaching the command post, his expression focused and determined. For the first time since the crisis began, she realized that the greatest danger might not be coming from inside the building. The hostage situation had just become something much more complicated and dangerous than anyone had anticipated. FBI. Special Agent Rebecca Foster answered on the second ring, her voice carrying the professional alertness of someone accustomed to crisis communications. Sarah delivered her briefing in rapid, precise sentences: municipal corruption involving murder, cover-up conspiracy reaching department leadership, immediate threat to civilian hostages, and armed operatives moving to eliminate witnesses. "Detective Martinez, you're alleging that Deputy Chief-level law enforcement ordered civilian murder to conceal contract fraud?" Agent Foster's tone indicated someone processing serious federal crimes rather than routine police business. "Affirmative. Supported by documentary evidence and witness testimony from individuals who have been coerced into participating in the cover-up for 3 years. The original victim, Jennifer Walsh, was murdered in 2019 after discovering fraudulent municipal contracts worth millions of dollars." Agent Foster was quiet for several seconds, probably accessing federal databases and coordinating with other agents. "Detective, federal tactical units are responding to your location, but we need 20 minutes. Minimum. Can you maintain stability until our arrival?" Through her scope, Sarah watched Harrison's 2 operatives enter the Meridian Plaza parking garage with coordinated precision. Their movement patterns indicated advanced tactical training and lethal intent. Meanwhile, Rodriguez had returned to his sniper position on the Caldwell building, now equipped with replacement optics that restored his operational capability. Agent Foster Harrison has deployed additional operatives to eliminate the hostages and witnesses. Ground assault is imminent, and sniper overwatch has been re-established with new equipment. Federal intervention needs to be immediate. Detective Martinez, you are authorized to use all necessary force to protect civilian lives. Federal agents will coordinate with your actions upon arrival. Sarah transitioned her rifle toward the Caldwell building, where Rodriguez was settling into his shooting position with a replacement scope. The distance remained 820 meters, but this time Sarah understood that disabling his weapon might not be sufficient. Harrison had probably ordered Rodriguez to fire immediately upon target acquisition, regardless of tactical considerations. Through her scope, Sarah observed muzzle flashes beginning to erupt on the 7th floor of the Meridian Plaza. Harrison's operatives had reached the conference room and initiated their assault on Torres's position. She could see Torres returning fire from behind the overturned conference table while Klein shepherded the other hostages toward interior walls away from the windows. Rodriguez's rifle muzzle shifted slightly, tracking toward the conference room windows as he searched for clear shots at Torres and Klein. Sarah could see his finger positioning on the trigger, preparing to engage on Harrison's authorization. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly with hostages caught in crossfire between multiple armed groups. Sarah's second shot of the day traveled 820 meters in 1.2 seconds, this time aimed at Rodriguez's rifle barrel rather than the scope mount. The impact completely disabled the weapon, sending metal fragments in multiple directions and forcing Rodriguez to abandon his position immediately. Through her scope, she watched him scramble behind the roof barrier, no longer capable of providing sniper support for the ground assault. Immediately after neutralizing the Overwatch threat, Sarah redirected her scope toward the 7th floor conference room windows. The tactical situation inside was chaotic but clear. Two operatives advancing on Torres's defensive position, while hostages cowered behind inadequate cover. Torres was outnumbered and would be overwhelmed within minutes unless the tactical balance shifted dramatically. Sarah made calculations that violated every protocol she had been taught about rules of engagement and proper authorization procedures. She aimed through the conference room windows and began engaging hostile operatives who were threatening civilian lives at a distance of 800 meters. Her first shot eliminated the operative advancing from the elevator bank, striking with precision that removed the primary threat to Torres's flank. Her second shot disabled the operative attempting to breach the conference room door, neutralizing the immediate assault without killing the individual. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds, but it fundamentally altered the tactical situation in favor of hostage survival. Torres immediately secured the operatives' weapons and began coordinating with Klein to establish better defensive positions. The hostages, though terrified, were no longer in immediate mortal danger from armed assault. At 12:53 hours, FBI tactical units breached the Meridian Plaza building through multiple access points, moving with coordinated efficiency that demonstrated federal-level training and equipment. Torres surrendered his weapon immediately upon federal identification, then began providing detailed information about evidence locations and Harrison's criminal activities. Agent Foster coordinated the federal response from the mobile command post, directing simultaneous raids on Harrison's residence, the Metro storage facility containing Jennifer Walsh's hidden evidence, and several municipal offices where financial records were being concealed. The operation expanded rapidly as federal agents discovered the true scope of the corruption conspiracy. Sarah maintained her overwatch position until FBI agents secured both the Caldwell building and her location on the Continental Insurance building. When Agent Foster reached her rooftop position 20 minutes later, Sarah was methodically disassembling her rifle and preparing evidence tags for the hash. The 800-meter shot, Parts 5, 6, and 7. The test, resolution, and vindication. Sarah watched. Deputy Chief Harrison approached the command post with calculated authority, his stride betraying urgency beneath practiced composure. Torres's voice crackled through her phone, urgent and precise. Harrison positioned a sniper on the Caldwell building, 800 meters northeast. Detective Rodriguez doesn't know his real orders to eliminate me if I start talking. Sarah's tactical mind processed the threat instantly. 800 meters. The distance she knew better than her own heartbeat. Rodriguez was skilled but inexperienced with complex operations involving moral ambiguity. He'd follow Harrison's orders without question, trusting the chain of command that had already been corrupted. "Who's the target?" Sarah asked quietly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through her system. "Me first, then Klein. Harrison needs us dead before we can testify about the municipal corruption. Once we're eliminated, he can spin this as a hostage situation gone wrong, terrorist attack, anything that deflects from the real conspiracy." Sarah studied the Caldwell building's roofline through the command post windows, noting the tactical advantages Rodriguez would have from that elevation. The sightlines were flawless for a precision shot, the angle providing clear visibility into the conference room where Torres held his hostages. If Harrison gave the order, Rodriguez would execute it without understanding he was committing murder. Disguised as legitimate law enforcement action, the weight of realization settled on her shoulders like a familiar burden. She had spent weeks investigating what she thought was simple embezzlement, only to discover a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of department leadership. Now that same leadership was orchestrating a cover-up that would cost multiple lives. Harrison reached Captain Reeves and immediately began asserting control over the tactical response. Sarah could see him gesturing toward building schematics, probably suggesting modifications to the assault plan that would maximize casualties and minimize witnesses. Reeves, unaware of Harrison's true agenda, nodded along with the suggestions. Sarah realized she faced an impossible choice: remain at the command post and watch Harrison manipulate the response toward a lethal conclusion, or act independently to neutralize the threat using skills that had already gotten her branded as insubordinate. The department had made it clear that officers who acted without authorization faced career-ending consequences, but Torres, Klein, and 3 innocent hostages faced death if she chose compliance over action. She chose action, as she always had. Mr. Torres, at exactly 12:20 hours, positioned Klein by the conference room windows. Make sure he's clearly visible from the northeast. Can you give me 15 minutes to establish a counter position? Detective Martinez, what are you planning? That sounds extremely dangerous. Something Harrison won't expect and Rodriguez won't. Be prepared for. Trust me one more time. Sarah left the command post with calculated casualness, walking toward her vehicle as if retrieving additional equipment rather than abandoning her assigned post. She retrieved her personal rifle from the trunk, the precision instrument she had maintained meticulously despite being removed from SWAT, the weapon that had never failed her when accuracy mattered most. The drive to the Continental Insurance building took 8 minutes through downtown traffic. Sarah used her badge and professional authority to access the building's roof through the maintenance stairwell, encountering minimal security resistance. The elevator operator simply nodded when she mentioned official police business. The rooftop provided exactly what she needed: unobstructed sightlines to both the Meridian Plaza and the Caldwell building, elevation comparable to Rodriguez's position, and concrete barriers that would provide cover during engagement. The wind patterns were predictable at this altitude, flags on nearby buildings indicating consistent southwest airflow at approximately 6 knots. Through her scope, she located Rodriguez prone behind the Caldwell building's barrier wall, rifle oriented toward the Meridian Plaza conference room, exactly as Torres had described. Distance, 820 meters. Rodriguez appeared calm and focused, unaware that his position was being observed by another sniper who understood the true nature of his assignment. Sarah established her shooting platform using a ventilation housing as stabilization, checking her scope's 0 and calculating ballistic adjustments for the extended range. The mathematics were automatic after years of precision shooting: wind deflection, bullet drop, target movement potential, margin of error at distance. At 1,219 to 50, Klein appeared in the conference room windows as planned. Sarah watched Rodriguez shift position slightly, settling into his final shooting stance, finger moving toward the trigger as he prepared to execute what he believed were legitimate tactical orders from department leadership. The moment crystallized with perfect clarity. Rodriguez was about to commit murder while believing he was performing his duty. Harrison's corruption had extended to manipulating good officers into becoming unwitting accomplices to conspiracy and covered up. Sarah controlled her breathing using techniques perfected through thousands of practice rounds, allowed her heartbeat to stabilize, and applied steady pressure to her trigger with the precision that had defined her entire career. Her shot traveled 820 meters in 1.2 seconds, striking Rodriguez's scope mount with surgical accuracy that destroyed the optical device without causing injury to the officer. Through her scope, she watched him recoil in surprise and confusion, then immediately begin scanning for threats as his training dictated, exactly the response she had anticipated. Perfect execution, Torres reported through the phone. Rodriguez is withdrawing from his position. Harrison looks absolutely furious and is arguing with someone on his radio. Sarah maintained overwatch while Torres moved quickly to Klein's desk, retrieving the evidence key that would unlock years of hidden documentation. Storage Unit 247 at Metro Storage. Torres briefed her rapidly. 3 boxes containing Jennifer Walsh's complete investigation financial records, proving fraudulent payments. Correspondence between Harrison and contractors discussing bid manipulation. Recordings of conversations about the conspiracy. She documented everything systematically before Harrison ordered her murder. Sarah made mental notes as Serez continued providing crucial intelligence. Jennifer Walsh had been more than a victim. She had been an investigator who recognized the scope of the corruption and took steps to preserve evidence even as she faced mortal danger. Her death had been calculated murder designed to protect millions of dollars in fraudulent municipal contracts. At 12:38 hours, Sarah observed Harrison leave the command post abruptly and walk rapidly toward a black SUV parked at the tactical perimeter. Through her scope, she watched him make urgent phone calls while consulting what appeared to be building schematics. His body language indicated escalating stress and increasingly desperate coordination efforts. Minutes later, Harrison met with two men in civilian clothing who had arrived in separate vehicles. 3 blocks from the Meridian Plaza, Sarah studied. Their movement patterns and equipment through her scope both carried concealed weapons and moved with tactical precision, suggesting military or law enforcement backgrounds. They were operatives, not routine investigators. Agent Foster, FBI. Sarah's emergency call connected immediately to the federal field office. "This is Detective Martinez with Metro Police. I have a federal situation requiring immediate intervention: municipal corruption, murder conspiracy, and imminent threat to civilian hostages." FBI Special Agent Foster listened to Sarah's rapid briefing about murder, corruption, and imminent threat to hostages. "Detective Martinez, federal units are 20 minutes out. Can you maintain the situation? Harrison's operatives are breaching the building." Rodriguez returned with new equipment. Sniper threat was reactivated. Through her scope, Sarah tracked the operatives entering through the parking garage, while Rodriguez settled back into position with a replacement scope. "You're authorized to use necessary force to protect civilian lives," Agent Foster confirmed. Sarah watched muzzle flashes erupt on the 7th floor as Harrison's operatives engaged Torres. Rodriguez was tracking targets through his scope, preparing to fire on Harrison's orders. Sarah's second shot of the day traveled 820 meters, disabling Rodriguez's rifle barrel completely. Then she redirected toward the conference room windows, where Torres was defending hostages behind overturned furniture. 2 precision shots through the building's windows eliminated both operatives, neutralizing the ground assault from 800 meters. While Torres protected the civilians. At 12:53 hours, FBI tactical units secured the building. Torres surrendered immediately. Klein briefed federal agents about the corruption scheme, and simultaneous raids recovered Jennifer Walsh's evidence. Agent Foster coordinated arrests while Sarah disassembled her rifle on the Continental building's roof. "Extraordinary marksmanship under extreme pressure," Foster commented. "Just doing what the situation required," Sarah replied. 4 targets beyond 800 meters while coordinating hostage rescue isn't standard police work. Sarah secured her equipment. "No, Agent Foster. It's the kind of independent decision-making that got me removed from SWAT 3 weeks ago." 6 weeks later, Sarah sat across from Agent Foster in the same conference room where Harrison had disciplined her. This time, the folder contained commendations rather than reprimands. "The Justice Department wants to recognize your actions officially," Foster said. "Your marksmanship and tactical judgment prevented multiple murders and preserved evidence." In a major corruption case, Harrison faced federal charges for murder, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. The corruption scheme had cost taxpayers $12 million. Torres received immunity for cooperation. Klein was cleared after. Investigators confirmed his coercion. Lieutenant Webb entered with new orders: promotion to Detective Sergeant, Special Investigations Unit, a position created for complex cases requiring both investigative and tactical expertise. "What exactly is this unit?" Sarah asked. "Cases requiring officers who can think independently and act decisively when normal procedures aren't adequate," Webb explained. Agent Foster added, The FBI has extended an offer for you to join our tactical program. Sarah considered both opportunities. Agent Foster, I'm honored, but my place is here. This community needs officers who understand that good police work sometimes requires acting on principle rather than following orders. That evening, Sarah visited Jennifer Walsh's grave, placing flowers by the headstone inscribed, "Dedicated to Justice." Jennifer had died trying to expose corruption through proper channels. Her evidence had ultimately brought justice, but at the cost of her life. Driving home past the Meridian Plaza, the Continental Insurance Building, and the pharmacy where her controversial career had begun, Sarah reflected on the path from disciplinary action to vindication. Her phone buzzed with a message from Detective Murphy. "Saw the news about your promotion." "Well deserved," she typed back, ready for whatever comes next. At home, she secured her new badge beside the Justice Department commendation. Tomorrow would bring new cases requiring independent judgment and precision action. Sarah had learned that real police work wasn't about blind compliance or avoiding controversy. It was about having courage to do what was right when institutional pressure demanded conformity with what was wrong. She had been told to stand down, follow protocol, stay in her lane. But when the moment required precision, judgment, and willingness to act independently, she had been ready. 800 meters. Multiple shots. Lives saved. The system needed someone willing to make the shots others couldn't or wouldn't take. Sarah Martinez had proven she was that someone. Detective Sergeant Sarah Martinez was ready for whatever came next. Cases requiring both investigative expertise and tactical precision. Independent action when necessary. Coordination when appropriate. Most importantly, she would continue making decisions based on what was right rather than what was convenient, what served justice rather than politics. Her career had survived controversy and emerged stronger. Her skills had been vindicated by results that spoke louder than criticism. Her judgment had been confirmed by outcomes that saved lives and exposed corruption. The Special Investigations Unit awaited, designed for officers who could act independently while serving justice. It was exactly the work she had been prepared for. Through tactical training and life experience, sometimes the shot that seems impossible becomes the only option that matters. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.